Welcome as we just share some of the areas of the work of the Council on Social Responsibility that we have been covering in recent times, and also that are important for us to be aware of during this time and into 2021. We're going to cover a number of topics, and firstly, Geoffrey Corrie is going to tell us about the legacy of violence.
Well, both our northern and southern executives have over the past few years worked together on the whole legacy of violence arising out of the Troubles. That means 1969 to 1989, those 30 years of difficulties. And we've made several submissions to the government, both governments, to seek to put in place a proper statewide infrastructure for working through the trauma of the past, or the incidents of the past. But unfortunately, the politicians have not yet agreed to any infrastructure. But in the background, many other things have been going on. The reality we face, however, is that the trauma of violence continues to remain silent under the surface. And unless we're able to tell our stories of pain, of suffering, and of hurt to each other, then this healing process that we badly need will not flourish. Failure to listen to each of our stories means the wounds of the past may get carried unhealed into the next generation. This year, 2021, marks the centenary of the foundation of Northern Ireland, as well as the foundation of the Free State in the South. We need to tell each other the stories heard from our grandparents of those events. We pray that the gun will never be used again to achieve political goals throughout our land.
Thank you, Geoffrey. And now David Clements is going to continue us thinking about the decade of centenaries.
It was more than 10 years ago that CSR, together with others, in particular the Reverend Johnson McMaster, did some serious thinking about how we mark a whole decade of centenaries, beginning with the sinking of the Titanic in 1912, and coming then into 21 and 22, when we have more difficult issues to face. Materials produced under the title Ethical Remembering, I think has been helpful to many different people. Amongst many other issues, it pointed us to recognize that we have different perspectives, that we need to respect each other's space and story, and honor our own story without denigrating the other's story, avoiding triumphalism, and learning from the lessons of history so that we can, from our various traditions, build for a better future. In the context of Northern Ireland and 1921 being the foundation of the state in Northern Ireland, the Interchurch group have set up a working party, which I've been part of, that has been trying to help our church leaders to focus on these issues and give some direction. Each of the churches will focus on it in different ways. But I think one very helpful thing that has been evident just at the turn of the year, I don't know whether the working party can claim any credit for this or not, but Archbishop Eamon Martin made some very helpful and well-received remarks that were, at least in some sense, challenging to the political parties on his side of the story, as it were. And that has been very helpful to help us to focus on what is difficult, because there are some people who regard Northern Ireland as something not to be celebrated, but to be commiserated on. And then there are those of us who do want to mark it in some meaningful way. So hopefully in the year ahead, we will be able to do that in ways that are constructive, that are respectful, and that promote healing.
Thank you, David. Now, Hazel Baird is going to speak about poverty.
The working poor have been a shameful feature of our communities for many years. The pandemic in this last year has put the spotlight on the issue of food poverty. with great concern for children not even getting one meal per day if they're not in school. Difficult for some of us to really comprehend. And of course, with an impending deep economic recession hitting such struggling families, we believe the church needs to ask, what does the Lord require of us to respond to and to advocate for his children in need in 2021?
Thank you, Hazel. Now, Grace McGurk is going to speak on domestic abuse.
Unfortunately, in our society, domestic abuse is being described as an epidemic. During the period from last March, when we were put in our first lockdown due to COVID and told to stay at home, the number of domestic abuse incidences have risen considerably, and they are still rising. For many people, staying at home is not safe. Constant close confinement with an abuser makes it much harder for victims to reach out for support. Domestic abuse is intentional and persistent. It's about controlling, threatening, and coercive behaviour, which can cause physical, emotional, psychological, or sexual harm. Domestic abuse can happen to anyone, regardless of background, gender, race, religion, or position in society. As people, as a church, it is important to educate ourselves on the subject in order to support those who are affected and to do it in a safe way. Educate ourselves on local resources, organisations, and support networks. There is a wonderful and useful awareness raising initiative called Safe Place. There are a number of our Methodist churches who have already signed up as safe places and taken part in a short awareness raising programme. It would be great if more could do so, or if they like, the churches who have already signed up could do a refresher on it. This Safe Place initiative, in partnership with Onus Training, is being rolled out soon, so it can be facilitated via Zoom. It will be open to all Methodist churches. It's free, and the resources that accompany it are also free. Your minister and/or your lay worker will receive information soon, and they will be able to pass it on to anyone within the church who is interested in having the church signed up as a safe place.
Thank you very much, Grace. Now we go to Isolde O'Connor, who will speak on refugees and migration.
As we, members of the Methodist Church in Ireland and all Christians, move forward into 2021 bearing the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on society, it is our societal and social responsibility to be aware of these things. 2020 saw the number of people forcibly displaced globally reach 80 million due to conflict, persecution, and climate change. Most of these people are displaced in their own countries or to neighboring countries, but it is our responsibility to welcome those that come to our island for refuge. There are many ways to support asylum seekers and refugees, but as a church, we continue to call for asylum seekers to be treated with dignity and respect, which includes ending the current direct provision system and replacing it with a not-for-profit system that prioritizes integration in the wider community. We also call for Ireland to share the burden of displaced people by taking refugees from countries such as Lebanon, which with a similar population to Ireland has over 1 million Syrian refugees. The Black Lives Matter movement has highlighted the issue of racism both at home and globally. As a multi-ethnic church, let us ensure that we listen to each other's experiences and support those who face racism, and that each of us reflects on and challenges our own prejudices towards people of color, towards travelers, and towards other groups. We aim to call out the racism around us at individual and institutional level to ensure that the society we live in, treats everyone equally, regardless of skin color or accent.
Thank you very much, Isolde. Now Hazel will speak again on the environment.
Love for God's creation demands that each of us repents of our part in the destruction, waste, and pollution of the earth's valuable resources, and indeed our collusion with excessive consumerism. In 2021, let us each commit to urgent and prophetic ecological responsibility. Under God's guidance, let individual Christians and us as a church act and be heard speaking up against climate injustice.
Thank you very much, Hazel. Now, we could cover lots of different topics on this recording. We cover this past year, certainly homelessness has been a very prominent ongoing concern for us. Mental health issues, hate speech, the Dying with Dignity bill in the South, and some of the issues that we have heard here, some of them are specific to the South or the North, whereas, you know, they all relate to each other anyway, and they overlap, and we are keen to be active in seeking for God's kingdom and God's will to be made known here on earth as it is in heaven. We're here to be helpful and hope that through the Council on Social Responsibility, we'll be able to help the church in our social responsibility. So do get in touch if there is anything that we can be of help with. Thank you for listening in.